Okay, so we are going to be shading this still life that I already sketched out. And I always like to start from the right corner just because I'm right-handed. You can start with whichever part of the still life you would like to. And I'm starting with the darkest value on this. Just because it is a white object does not mean that it doesn't have values. So you have to train your eyes to be able to see all the different values that are on your object to try to draw this realistically. So that rim where it kind of folds over is the darkest part of the picture. So I'm only outlining where I really see the shadows well. And I know that it's going to be darker in that area because that's what it looks like on my reference image. So again, when you're shading, you have to look at your reference image the entire time. So maybe like 75% of the time I'm looking at my reference image and 25% of the time I'm looking at my paper. So I'm still slowly building up the shading, and I'm really not just going in and doing the darkest value. You want to build your value up, and this is what takes the longest. And you really want to see where the darkest part is and where the lightest part is. So even the white part for the highlight to be able to show, you want to shade in some of the mid-tone values. And that part is a little darker, so I'm going in, and I kind of like to go in the direction that forms the curve of my object if it is round. And you really have to be careful with the handle because the values in the handle really makes it look three-dimensional. And if you get the value wrong, it can look a little weird. Like this part that I'm shading is actually the underside of the handle, but due to the way that it's facing the light, the shadow that's created underneath the handle is what gives it that dark value. So again, don't outline anything that does not have a dark value. And I'm outlining because I know that that value right there is going to be the darkest part on the handle. And I go in and I'm going to add more shading so I can add more value to my vase. So add your values as you go, but you don't want to finish everything. So I'm not done with the vase yet, but I'm going to move on to the mug just so I can have everything done kind of all at once. You don't want to finish one thing and then realize that the other thing is not even in the correct place. So again, I like to shade in the direction that the item is curved. So as I'm working on this part of the mug, there's a little bit of a shadow down here. So I need to make sure that I get that shadow before I start shading. And I'm shading this way because the mug is kind of going in this direction. So I'm still using the cross-hatching method, but I am adding value a little bit at a time and in the downward direction because that's the curvature of the item. So none of these are done. So I wasn't done with the picture. And so as I see where it needs more value, I go back and I work on it. And obviously I'm trying to really do this quickly so your drawing will or should look better than my drawing because this is not the most accurate. And this is just the direction that I like to do my shading so it can show that this is a rounded object and it gives it just extra dimension as you shade. Now you really have to be careful when you're looking at the shading on the mug because you have to look at where the shadows are hitting for it to show which part is the inside of the mug, which part is the rim of the mug, and which part is the highlight. So if you do not get the highlights and the shadows correctly for this, your mug will look a little off. So when working on the handle, it's the same as when you were working on the handle of the pitcher. It is a round handle, but you do have to really look at where the shadows are, because this is three-dimensional. If you put the shadows in the wrong place, it's not going to look right. So it took a lot of looking, and again, I'm fixing as I go. So as I put the shadow on this handle, I realized that the handle is a little bit too big, and so I went back and fixed it as I'm shading it. So I'm not worried about erasing these where I got it wrong, but you want to leave off your highlighted area, or you can shade and then use an eraser to subtract. I don't like the subtraction method just because I don't like to erase on my paper, but whichever way you want to do it is fine. So I'm outlining this part of the inside of the mug because I want it to show that that's going to have a dark, inside to this mug. So that's why I'm outlining. So if it wasn't going to be dark, I wouldn't outline it. But because it is going to be shaded a dark value, I went ahead and outlined, just like it when you do the geometric three-dimensional objects. You do not shade or you do not outline until you know that that part should be really dark. So this is incomplete. I'm not completing it right now. It would take way too long. And I already had this grape that's inside of the mug drawn out. So you want to be careful of the shape of the grape and where this cast shadow from the grape is going to go. Okay, so once I'm done with the grape and the drop shadow for the grape, I am going to work on the doily and the drop shadow. So in order for an item to look like it is on top of something else, you should have the shading done in the correct position as the light source is showing. So I'm just doing this rather quickly. This is a longer still life, and I'm not able to show you the completed project, but just make sure that you're learning to draw from observation and you're actually observing and looking to see where everything is, where there's a shadow, where there are textures. And I really wanted to kind of show you where the drop shadows are in the doily, and I'm just quickly doing this as my guide, kind of adding a little bit of that texture in there. And then I went in and kind of redefined my grapes, but this is getting a little long, so I just went ahead and did these grapes because they are foreshortened. As in they're not just placed there correctly. It kind of looks like they are moving away from you. So the drop shadows on these grapes that are closer to you are really important because it will really show where the light source is coming from. And so you want to shade the grapes because they are round and you want to show that they are rounded objects. You don't really want to just outline or create one-dimensional shading, you want to make sure that you match all the values of everything. And so it looks three-dimensional. This is how you draw realistically. So as you can see right here, I kind of messed up my location of that other grape. And so I just went ahead and fixed it, and that is it.